Okay, hi everyone. So we are, as you see, we're going to talk about art and community and how it intersects with healing and how it intersects with endometriosis, and talk a bit about some sort of self-management strategies, how this can apply to people with endo. And so we'll start off by introducing ourselves.
Hello, I'm Monica Moranti. I am a PhD student at the University of Pittsburgh, focusing on the benefits of arts and health and how we can integrate that into more public health practices. And I'll be sharing a little bit more about the background of that field in a few moments.
My name is Lindsay. I am an MPH student at the University of Pittsburgh studying behavioral and community health sciences. And I'm also a photography professor and a longtime artist, practicing artist.
And hi, I'm Izzy. You might have seen me floating around today and yesterday. I'm the community health program coordinator at EndoFound, but one of the other hats I wear is doing research at University of Pittsburgh on the intersection of arts and health. So I'm super excited to bring sort of this other work to EndoFound.
So just to get us started, I know this slide has a ton of words on it, but I'm just trying to give you a crash course on the benefits of arts and health and how it impacts our bodies biologically, psychologically, and also socially. And so we're going to be setting this up for you guys to do an arts activity in a few minutes. So I just want you to have this context in mind as we start to explore those things and as you think about your experiences with endo. So there's a lot of research that's been done demonstrating a variety of effects of arts on organs throughout your body. Whenever you're engaging with arts, you're and neurologically, there's a lot that's happening. With your brain, engaging in art helps you remember things better. It is critical to reward and emotion processing, and these areas of the brain have been shown to be structurally altered. For example, people who are learning music from an early age have larger motor, auditory, and visual spatial brain regions and enhanced brain plasticity. And additionally, listening to music is also changing your brain structure as well. So even stuff that you're doing every day, like listening to music, can impact your brain. Singing and breathing impacts your lungs as well. Similarly, whenever you're dancing, arts have been used for folks who have limited hand function. And so there's an organization in the UK that uses magic tricks and teaching kids magic tricks in order to improve their physical skills. Scroll down a bit. Psychologically, arts has an impact on your cognition, your ability to learn language, and your memory. Kids who engage in arts helps improve their learning and social development as well. And for example, folks with Alzheimer's and dementia have been found to have improved results whenever they are engaging with arts. Folks who have PTSD, diary writing has been found to be really helpful. Poetry therapy has been found to support people experiencing grief following brain injuries. And it's also used to help people cope with illnesses, specifically with palliative care. Regarding social aspects of art, whenever you're engaging with it, it can help combat loneliness, reduce premature death, support social cohesiveness, and also reduce conflict in communities. So I'm speaking really broadly about all of this stuff, but generally engaging in the arts is impacting every single area of your life and your body as well. And so that's the big takeaway that we want you to have from this. And then I hope that if you have any more questions about those specifics, I'm happy to dig into it a bit later, but I just wanted to get a broader overview of everything that can be achieved with arts. Sorry, this is still me. So essentially what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that we all have health-related needs and we all have ways that we are trying to meet those needs. And so oftentimes whenever we're looking for supports in our community, we already have really well-established social networks that are able to connect us to the things that we are looking for. So whenever you're going along your pathway of where it is that you want to end up, identifying your needs and then having a certain individual be that connector can help you meet that. I know that's rather obvious here, but as Izzy's going to talk about in a moment, thinking specifically about what our social networks might look like and who those valuable people are going to be able to help us support our own health. And so as we think specifically about arts opportunities, there might be folks that we are on the peripherals of our social networks. And so I encourage you to just think about very broadly about the whole of your social network and find maybe those key folks that you might not have thought about reaching out to before, and consider what they might be able to connect you to expand the range of resources that are available to you.
Awesome, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about how this directly applies to endo, because clearly it applies to so many different aspects of health, but there is very little, if any, research on the endo and arts connection. There is research using arts as the research tool, and there's a little bit about the impact, but not a whole lot out there. And so I want to talk through how some of what we just talked about can be applied specifically to endo symptoms. So starting off, we talked about how art really interacts with both physical and mental health. And so if you've ever been to physical therapy, you know how important breathing is, thinking about that in and out. And art has been shown to be very effective in helping you regulate breathing. Art is also a distraction. And while we know that it is often very difficult to not think about your pain, and we know that the more you think about it, the worse it feels. And I want to emphasize that I am not saying that creating artwork will get rid of your endo symptoms or you will no longer feel pain. But thinking about it as a way of coping and a way of maybe processing how you're feeling. And I know sometimes I'll be ruminating, and the more you think about it, I'll end up feeling worse. And so another way to engage with art is, okay, let me draw what I'm feeling or do something completely unrelated. And that little bit of distraction can have a healing benefit. It also does engage many different parts of your brain. And as Monica was talking about, you form new connections and helps with that neuroplasticity as well, and just processing your emotions. So if you've heard of art therapy, that's really about processing your emotions using art as a tool. But you can also create unrelated art. So you can create things that have nothing to do with endo if that's what you prefer. And so even just the act of creating, no matter what the outcome is, has a lot of benefits. And so another piece of it, because we're talking about community engagement as well, and then we'll go into how they intersect, is that there is a strong connection between mental health and chronic pain. So especially if pain is one of your bigger symptoms, having a support network can be very, very impactful. I think we all know that if you have others with endo who you're surrounded by, it can just help you feel generally better, having others to commiserate with or talk through experiences with. And that's part of why we're all here, right? And so this is a version of that community engagement, but it exists in so many ways, and connecting with others who don't necessarily have endo. There's also connecting with the people in your life who you already know, but there could also be just being in a public space that your community is in. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be sitting down with a friend, talking to them. That is wonderful, but sometimes you don't have the energy for that. But maybe if you sit in a park and you're around other people, even if you aren't actively having a conversation, it allows that sense of belongingness that we know is very helpful for mental health. And we know that there's that connection between mental and physical as well. And I think I covered most of that. And so part of what we'll talk about is the impact of creating art in a public space. So a lot of our research involves doing photography in a botanical garden and using that as a short-term stress reduction tool. But our goal is to move on and use that as a chronic pain tool. And so specifically for people with chronic pain, having accessible ways to move about a space while creating artwork. We chose photography, not only because Lindsay is amazing and knows everything about photography, but also because it is a very accessible art form, and you can do it anywhere, you can do it with anything, and it isn't as physically demanding as some other forms of art. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so creating art can be very intimidating. I in no way, shape, or form thought of myself as an artist until I started this work. But that's okay. And the art can just be for you and for you alone. It's really about the act of creating and having something that you created, not the product itself and how it looks, if that makes sense. So it's really, it can just be for you and you alone. It also doesn't need to necessarily be like personal and have this deeper meaning. You don't need to get caught up in, okay, what is the symbolism I'm trying to do? Like thinking about what you would analyze. It can just be anything that you want to make. And don't be afraid to try a new medium. Cost can be a barrier, but there are also like thrift stores that you can get inexpensive materials, or just anything that you have lying around can be used to make art. And we'll do a workshop in a moment making art using general household things. And the point really isn't to make quote unquote good art. It's just to make art. And this can be done either independently or in a community, or it can be done independently but in a more public space. And so we'll talk through that a little bit. But you get benefits whether you're sitting alone and making something, you're in conversation with someone else and you're both making something, or you're making something while in a public space surrounded by your broader community. So we put together a little choose your own adventure to show how this would look. And so if you're thinking of doing something like this, there are three main categories you would want to think about. So first is, what's the medium you would want? Second is prompts. Now, the reason why we do prompts is because a lot of us do not think of ourselves automatically as an artist, and you might want a direction. If you don't need a direction and you can just be inspired by your space, that's great. I know a lot of us don't have brains that work that way. And so you can choose a prompt like, where are you, especially if you're in a public space, or who supports you, what scares you, just who are you as a whole? So thinking about, okay, what am I trying to answer? Then there's also a bunch of different locations you could do these things in. For example, you can bring a sketchbook answering what makes you you while you are sitting on a bench at a museum and absorbing the surroundings and being surrounded by art. And so it's a very quiet activity you can be doing on your own. Hopefully would not flare pain. There's very accessible activities, but you of course know your body's best. But then you can do it in these sorts of public locations. And so I'll go into a few more examples. Yeah. So there are a lot of places in New York City that are free to access. And so if you are here, feel free to use any of these. So like Central Park is one of my favorite spots. I have a watercolor pen that I use in Central Park when I want to get out. But then there's also like the Bryant Park, huge public library. And then there's also little other museums. But then even if you aren't in New York City, you can find things like this near you. And so libraries often have free programs that allow you to access museums, zoos, anything like that on specific days each month. I know Pittsburgh has that, but a lot of other libraries do as well. Even local markets, like being at a farmer's market and just surrounded by people. Endo can be so isolating in so many different ways, especially when you're having pain and it's difficult to go and do activities. And this is a way you can sit somewhere and be engaged without necessarily getting up and walking around. So you could be sitting at a zoo, sitting at one exhibit. You don't need to walk around everything and you can still engage with your surroundings. And so that's sort of the idea of what we're thinking about here. And there's a lot of ways to do that. So I'll pass it off to Lindsay. We're going to be doing a little activity, and we also have an art teacher here, and I'll have her walk around, I think, a little bit at tables while we're doing our activity and show some of her work and talk about why creation in endo is so wonderful. But I'll let Lindsay explain our activity first.
Thank you all for your attention, and thank you all so much for having us. We're thrilled to be here. So the activity that we're going to be doing is making a zine. Has anybody made a zine or knows what a zine is? I see one hand, two hands. So zines were kind of first entering the public sphere in about the 1930s. They were typically used as, actually in science fiction for disseminating and thinking on science fiction novels. They were resurfaced through the 60s and 70s in the ACT UP era, in the Riot Girls era, and they have a nice intention of like hands-on making, copy paste, a little bit of punk rock, a little bit of underground information spreading. They resurfaced, sorry, ACT UP in the 90s, Riot Girls in the 60s, resurfacing in the 90s, and then they are now a really common form of artistic expression and ways to sort of explore yourself, your community, or different topics that you want to spend time thinking about. So it's a really good method of, do you have copy paper? Do you have bits of paper, junk mail, magazines laying around your house? Maybe somebody signed you up for a magazine subscription and you're like, how did I even get this? That is all raw material for your zine. So when we think about zine making, we have some prompts for you that if you're kind of thinking, I don't even know where to begin with this, you can start with something as simple as, okay, I'm going to find my favorite color across all of these different pages, or maybe I'll cut words out that I feel drawn to. And you can also answer prompts like, what does endometriosis make you feel? How do you represent that in images that you can find? What was your journey to your diagnosis? If endo was a person, what would you say to it? And you can use these different prompts to kind of characterize your feelings, and it's a little self-reflective. So allow yourself to connect images and words to how you're feeling, and then you just kind of get to cut them all out and glue them right into a little zine, and you can take it with you. A zine is, the ones that we're using are about this big, and they are eighth folded pages. So it's just a tiny little book that you can glue into. We have a bunch of them pre-made for you, but if you would like to learn how to fold it yourself, we're happy to help you fold it yourself. And yeah, so are there any other? Yes, you can.
So we have a bunch of materials out there. So there's 3 tables of materials. I believe we have maybe 15, 20 minutes until the next session. So we made sure to build in a little bit of time to make sure you can start things. And then the materials will be out there all day today and all day tomorrow. There's also another table out there with like mints and stress balls and different things you can play with and heating pads. And so if at any point you need a rest and you want to get away from the conference things, or if you just need anything, there's that space out there too. And so feel free to use that space at any time in addition to making your zine. I think that's all that we have, but we would love to take any questions and then we can send you all out to make something, and we'll be walking around and can chat as well. But yeah. Awesome. Any questions? Yeah.
It's more of a comment, really. I really appreciated how you guys put it together, and especially as it relates to the different options that you have and the prompts. Because I mean, I've thought about those things, but I didn't actually correlate it to like my symptoms and like what I can do to get out of that space. And so I really wanted to say I appreciated that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So my question is being more an active participant in art more beneficial than the passive part? So, I guess listening to music versus, trying to play the piano, right? So how's the research sort of seeing those
That's
two?
a really great question. And there's a lot that people talk about with the like receptive, like listening to music, as you say, versus more of the active participation, like playing the piano. Essentially, people are saying that you should probably engage in some sort of formal arts activity 2 times a month. And that can be something that really improves your mental health or contribute to physical health symptoms. When they've done longitudinal studies, folks who engage in arts activities 2 times a month or more have better long-term health outcomes. As far as listening to music or a more like participatory experience, I think whenever you are, it depends on what's engaging you. There isn't a clear-cut definition of like receptive being better than participatory, but I think it's the amount of immersion or like flow that you engage with whenever you're doing that activity. Because if you're being forced to learn the piano and you hate it, like it's not going to be having the same level of benefit to you as it is if you are like thoroughly like enmeshed in the music that you're listening to and really having a deeper experience. So I would also say that like whenever you're listening to music and cleaning your house, you are getting some benefits of that. But if you're like at the orchestra and you're also surrounded by community, there are other things happening as well. So I think also thinking about the context in which we are doing all of the art is really important as well. So
Thank you.